GM, welcome everyone to the eighth episode of The Hub, a developer focused Farcaster podcast. I'm your host here, dillsteak.eth. I'm here for a solo week, but nonetheless, a week of a lot of really cool Farcaster updates. First of all, apologies for the technical difficulties with our stream from last week. We had an amazing stream with Sweetman, but something happened with the audio on StreamYard. Something about hidden episodes, but we'll see if we can get Sweetman back another time because that was a really good episode and excited to be here today to just go over some of the top updates. Maybe next week we'll do a little bit of a larger guest show going into the holidays, wrapping up the year, but just wanted to spend some time going over the top developer stuff. And there's also some stuff I've been working on that, especially since it is a solo podcast here today, that I wanted to go over. Awesome. So let's start with some of the main updates that are going to be V2 frame focused. One of the main ones is if you haven't already seen a V2 frames work on web for Warpcast. One example, just because I put it out recently, is for Cortex. What I'm building. You see the image here. You can click message Cortex and it opens the V2 frame. I log in with my wallet here. That is the auth that is like propped up from Warpcast. So if you had already logged into Warpcast with your wallet, whether on mobile or web, that wouldn't already pop up. But as you can see here, it is an entire web view to be able to do something, which I think is really cool. So I'm excited about that. And if you're a developer, you should definitely check out the developers frames page here of the frame developer tools. So this is on mobile, but now we have it on web as well. Really easy for testing them out. And it even saves my added frames. So these are frames I added on mobile. I can just go and click into one of them, like cast or scan, and see it right here, which I think is very neat and easy for kind of like testing your frames. And some of the things I'm going to be showing you today, I think just push even further down the rabbit hole or emphasis of V2 frames being very easy to add and very beneficial for you as an app developer. So one of the things we have here is from Mo, from Butterfly, who's been building a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool V2 frames as well. He made a server-side rendered V2 frame. We'll show the frame actually. He made this SpaceX launch tracker, which I think is very neat. Let's check it out. So you can see upcoming launches, past launches. It seems like there's this little graph here of the number of launches by rocket, if I'm not mistaken. Past, coming. But yeah, I think this is quite nice. And he said, oh, it makes sense because it's server rendered. So yeah, he said that it's server rendered, and because of that, okay, here, because of that, he can't use the frame SDK on the client side. So he set up this JavaScript script, and that will just fully be bundled on the client, and anyone can call it from their server rendered page. So if you are writing a fully server rendered app, you should check this out. Use it on Valtown, which is a fun little like serverless platform as well. Another one is Horsefax actually forked the Uniswap repo and made the entire thing a frame, which I think is very cool. Uniframe.org, we can check out that frame as well. You pop it up. I'm already logged in with my wallet. You see the network changed to Ethereum, and then we can go swap or do whatever else in Uniswap right here, which I think is very cool. And look, all these other ones, like any of the pages, DAI, USDC, MFers, you'll click view and it will open up the Uniswap page directly for that asset. One thing, we can even see the source code, and we'll see the main things that Horsefax changed here. Especially on a big like interface from Uniswap is a big monorepo across web and mobile, and even on both platforms. They have very intricate setups. So I think the main one here is this use frame SDK. So when you are wanting to connect a wallet with frames, now which I'll show you in a second, there is this new Farcaster frame WAGMI connector. Before, they recommended you just copy paste the code into your repo, but now they actually made it a connector. So just like this snippet, all you do in your WAGMI config, you can even keep the rest of your connectors. Like here, Uniswap has all these other connectors injected with fallback, wallet connect, Coinbase wallet, etc. But you can also add Farcaster frame, and when it's available, it will prioritize that one, which I think is quite neat, easy to use here. And then how it's being used is there's a Farcaster frame provider. Funny enough, again, I use the provider in my app as well. Inside of the provider, if there is context, then we want to auto connect running this connect function from WogMe Actions. It uses our WogMe config and it is defaulting to the Farcaster frame connector, which is what we want in this example. So very clean code, good way to add it into a big app. Like again, this is a very big app. So very cool to be able to add it in. Great example, and many different reasons why you should be making a V2 frame. Sorry, one second, just getting a call. All right, let's go. So I saw this and I wanted to cover it as well. Horsefax and Dan said, oh, maybe someone will be making like a micro framework for frames. I was thinking, oh, maybe I should do it with or caster kit. Similarly, I am thinking, should I do something with that? Um, And I guess UI kit is a little bit different. Maybe someone will do something on top of Tailwind and Shad CN. But what I did want to point out is that the team from Frames.js seems to have been making a very cool PR on Frames.js. Because at first I wasn't sure if they were doing it. I guess I just hadn't like looked into it as much. Let's find this. But this PR here looks great, and it's not ready yet. Shout out Michael, I guess he's on the Frames.js team. But look at all this. It's very hefty. React Native Web View support, Frames JSON, actions, a V2 parser, being able to actually render V2 frames in your own app. Um, yeah, some really cool stuff here. I mean, if you haven't already looked at Frames.js, they just have a very in-depth library for manning all this stuff and for rendering V1 frames on mobile and web. So I really trust them with this. And I think with the UI stuff I already know they have, they can just add some adapter for Tailwind or Shad CN. Like, I don't think that thing Horsefax and Dan were talking about, I don't really think we need that. I guess someone can make a super opinionated, but I don't fully know where that would fit in. I think if anything, what's more helpful is there any sort of AI tool or builder or anything like that that augments people making a V2 frame? But wanted to highlight this because I'm really excited to see this work. I do hope that it goes through, and I would certainly use it. Another thing I saw from my friend Greg on the Third Web team was his frame starter template. He said it's a single line of code to connect to Third Web, which is quite cool. We can even go through and check out that code. Setting up V2 frames are quite simple. It seems like here it's even more simple, even more dead simple. So let's see. Let's go to our layout. That's probably where this is happening. With the Third Web provider. Okay, so I guess this is happening in the page or on the app page. Where is this happening? In the app. Okay. So if the SDK is loaded, then we set the context. And if there's a wallet, we run connect to wallet, which calls wallet.connect client's Third Web. That seems very straightforward as well. Third Web has so much cool stuff. So you should definitely check this out. It seems like it's pretty simple to work with. Another thing here from Spencer Perkins, I was looking at this as well, which is cool. Identity Kit makes it easy to integrate Web3 profile pictures and usernames into your app with just a few lines of code. Supports ENS, NNS, nouns name service, Farcaster, base names and union names. And we can check it out here. I think this looks cool. I'm curious to see who's going to, like, what kind of use cases we'll have for people, but very simple to set it up. You have an address, you pass it in, and then you have some extra you can pass in. Do you want Farcaster info? Like, for example, here on the docs, you have Vitalik, Jacob, and you can set all these different revolvers. It's cool. And I've played around with the API as well. It seems like it's pretty fast. I do wonder if they're only returning one thing, then I'm sure they have some sort of validation that people do want that one thing that they're returning, because it is pretty fast. So it's cool. One more thing, this was very interesting from V today, saying we've been working on improving our spam detection. A big source of alpha has been taking algos used to rank content on the web and modifying them to work in the Farcaster space, which we've seen over the past year or so with Warpcast. Akshan and Not a Wizard collaborated to add a PageRank, hyperlink, included topic search, and a Louvain clustering. Let's just read through the whole thing. I think this looks very cool. Quick primer on how spam is handled in Warpcast. Accounts are categorized roughly as definitely not spammy, probably not spammy, unknown, maybe a little spammy, and definitely spammy. Roughly 5% of the network is manually labeled by the team, and that's used to train the ML model. Nice. The model looks at a lot of signals and gives the user a score. Interesting. For example, if you like things 24 hours a day, you're likely not a human. Multiple bad signals like this move accounts closer to the definitely spammy label. So, everything is a world of signals the model has gotten quite good and rarely misses. In the cases where it does, we manually override it and retrain it on the misses periodically so it gets better. Nice. Also tries to reevaluate periodically so it can update the user as they have more of an opinion. So back to the signals. PageRank is the famous Google algorithm used to rank web pages based on how many other pages link to them. We used a modified version, which looks at how many non-spammy users follow you to determine your score. That's applied recursively to people you follow. A surprising behavior is how many obviously spammy accounts end up being followed by some good accounts. People make mistakes and rarely fix them, so the algorithm has to be adaptive enough to account for that interesting overriding human behavior. Louvain clustering is another graph-based approach built around the idea that spammy accounts are much more likely to follow each other in rings. A greedy scoring system is used to identify parts of the network that have tight follow loops, and combined with the average score of users in the group can determine whether an account is more or less likely to be spammy. Okay, I'll have to read more into that. Hits is another page rank like iterative algo where every user is given two scores: an authority score, which is the sum of the hub scores of the users who follow them, and a hub score, which is the sum of the authority scores. I feel like that was you're defining it using any other word, but I'll have to read into that too. This is good for boosting the scores of certain non-spammy users that would not rank favorably in PageRank because they don't have a lot of follows. And okay, all right. Uh, so it seems like that is actually the end of the thread. This is cool. I think the main thing to take away with is like PageRank is the main one here, and using signals. So if you don't really know what a signal is, it is any sort of event that is happening, and then because of that event, you are triggering something in your database. So these can be positive or negative. For example, viewing something, liking someone's information, these are all different types of signals that can have different connotations. So, like, for example, here, the liking things 24 hours a day, the act of liking is a signal. And so there's probably some sort of pipeline that's processing the like and is checking, well, if this is happening multiple times a day, then that signal is doing something to affect where the user ends up as a label. So very cool stuff. And then I know this is a bit of a short list today. Excuse me. We'll get a longer one next week. Is what's the best open source audited vanilla ERC 721 contract from Dan? I wonder what they are cooking up because I don't think he would just float this out there and then not do something with it. I do know that he had rewards, like USDC rewards on Warpcast. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. We'll see. Another thing which is great, which I just, saw here, I'll add it to the list so I remember for next time, is user authentication in frames. So, for many of you who have built V1 frames, know your frame message was signed with the user's app key, and you were given data back, which showed you that signature. And you can use that as kind of like a guaranteed auth mechanism. Right now in V1 frames, the guaranteed auth mechanism is the wallet, but signing with Farcaster doesn't work. It's not built in. And even if you prop up sign in with Farcaster in your V2 frame, it's not going to go through the entire flow. There's just none of it. You get past this user context, but technically it's spoofable and it doesn't contain any actual auth information, no signer, none of that. I've been waiting on something like this for a little bit, and I'm glad that Warpcast put it together. So let's go through this and see what's going on in the comments. From Tony, shout out to Tony. He says, In the original Frames design, a frame message was signed over by a user's app key. This was a lightweight way to give frames a reasonable expectation of who they were interacting with while providing a great UX for the user since the user didn't need to take any additional actions. The downsides to this approach is that app keys weren't intended to be authorization tokens. Now they're like signers. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be off. It was supposed to be a way for you to access the right permissions for that user. They're warned it can post on their behalf, but it's not supposed to be general auth. That's the main exactly. Nothing indicates it will be used as a general purpose for means of auth. You want an actual auth flow, nonce, JWT, whatever for that. Auth keys are usually custodial, they're controlled by the client instead of the user, and apps need to maintain separate flows versus frame interactions so that they can be compatible. In Frame v2 sign with Farcaster, this should be the primary mechanism to authenticate users. We can add an action API request sign on with Farcaster with a nonce that goes through the flow within the frame and returns a token if completed. Since the token is controlled by the hosting client, we can avoid some of the security and routing issues that we have in the standard flow. Phishing attacks become less likely since the host knows the domain of the user interacting with it, and the flow will be interacted in the client instead of the relay server. We can make optimizations. As long as that works well across clients, that's fine. Here we go. The biggest drawback to this approach will be user experience won't always be seamless. For example, a Warpcast web user or Supercast super user who has their custody address hosted by Warpcast Mobile will need to go to their mobile device to complete the request. It's a general limitation of signing with Farcaster that should be independently addressed, but is outside of the scope of this current proposal. I agree, but we should still address it regardless. And then let's see some of these comments. Is the current auth out of the question? Uh, I think what they propose is kind of better, honestly. Can't we support both? Likely won't benefit, but the cost is a complex auth model. Yeah, exactly. Dun, dun, dun. How does it relate to Farcaster Connect? The frames model, a request is handled directly by hosting the Farcaster client. Super implements frames v2 and receives a sign-in request. Super has access to the custody, they can get the signature. Okay, that's like kind of how it was before. I think any of those comments should just be addressed outside of the scope, like just for sign up with Farcaster. The rest of this makes sense to me. Cool. Let's scroll through real quick and see if I missed anything on the feed. And if not, I have some personal dev stuff I can go over, and then we'll bring it into next week. Oh, you know what? There is one thing I wanted to cover. Not in like a critical way. I just want to be like objective. That's kind of my goal here. So maybe you guys saw the Zora stuff from yesterday, the Zora retro grant. So Zora got they got either this amount or more, whatever. They got an OP grant, and then they decided to do this community retro grant, which is it's definitely very nice. No one said they had to do that. Claiming is open until March 16th. But then my entire timeline on X and Farcaster was flooded with people saying I didn't get the airdrop, I didn't get the airdrop, and even the people who I know are like the most prolific builders and creators or collectors on Zora, even someone like Chris Corella, who I saw on some dashboard, is in like the top 10 most earned creators on Zora, and it's not just about that, but like I'd heard some outrage from people before about how they handle DevRel or supporting devs, and it seems like this pushed it even more. I will say I think Zora has done a lot of good stuff, and it seems like from this post from Jacob, they're trying to look into this. And so I don't want to be bashing, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I just report on it to say that's the rhetoric I've heard, and this isn't the first time that I've heard it. None of this is easy, but yeah, from a lot of different people, and also I do like taking the L learnings here. That's a nice line. So definitely want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I like the protocol. I've liked using it, but I'm going to keep my eye on how that progresses. Let's go check again, see if we missed anything. And I do really hope that we see even more V2 frames. Like all this stuff takes time, but it seems like people are still more focused on AI agents and not as much the V2 frames, which is funny because people thought, oh, well, frames are just like a static link. But there's almost like some stuff you can do in a V1 frame you can't do in a V2 frame. Like if I want to RSVP, do I want to have the whole web app open? I kind of just want to hit yes there. Maybe there's an in between. Um, and I don't know, yeah, with any of it, it takes time. Like people said, oh, we need an entire web page, and now people aren't really building as much on it. I also wonder, like, are there other surface areas? Like, is the only place you want to see this in the feed? I know we have the home page, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a great answer there. I hope we see more. This stuff takes time, though. This is a good thread of some of them that are available. The ball frame from vMather, that's good. Onsen, launch tokens, 2048. A chatbot from Mo, Clanker assets. Oh wow, all pages are V2 frames. Personal site. Yeah, cool. Well, I'll show two things. I'll show all the V2 frames I've made and the code for them. And on top of that, I'll also show what I've been working on with Cortex. Hopefully for the V2 frames, I can show you like how simple I think it is to set these up. So cool. Here are them. So my personal website, dylansteck.com. There's no login or anything. It's just static site of my blog posts. Quickly go through how this works. So just like any V2 frame at .wellknown, I host a farcaster.json file, the domain account association. You can only do this on mobile right now, WordCast mobile, like generating it, but you just put in the name of your domain and it literally gives you this. You copy paste it in. It can give you the entire thing as well. I just already had this, and this is very simple. This is just a frame manifest. And then in the layout here, I have my generate metadata, which is doing what it normally does. And in the other, for the Farcaster frame tag, FC:frame, I'm JSON.stringifying a create frame. The reason I have it as create frame is because I want to change it so that when I can update it so that individual blog posts here have their own pages. I just haven't done that yet. So I'm, passing it in like this, where I have a default title, default image URL, and I can pass in the rest, and I just get this JSON. And then for the entire site, I have this frame provider. It can add the frame here if the user doesn't already have the frame added, and then it will load the frame if it hasn't already loaded. This is kind of just boilerplate for a V2 frame, but very simple to set up. I'll save Cortex for last because I want to spend some time on it. The purple auction, this is one of my favorite ones so far, also because it actually uses your wallet. So you can view the auction on Purple DAO. I don't know why the site color looks like this right now, but you can go back and see all the different auctions. You can click, we can settle this auction. Why don't we settle this auction? What the heck? And then let's reload the page, and the auction should be settled. We'll be on 708. Yeah, there we go. Nice. I don't know if it's going to say that I settled it or not, but yeah, so pretty simple. You can settle the auction, you can bid on it, etc. Some of the cool things though, you can go and see an about the DAO. You can see a trending feed of all the top casts from the DAO using Nanar React SDK. You can see all the proposals. You can go make your own proposal, and you can just go see the DAO announce builder, which I don't think it links out in the V2 frame. But yeah, I really like this one. I think this is like really effective, and it was also very easy to add. It was all the similar stuff, and all you're doing is adding that connector. I can show you here. Sorry, wrong commit. So yeah, like you just take this connector, right? We're installing it from FrameWogMe connector, and we're just adding it here in connectors. It's very, very simple. For Kismet Casa, I won't show the code because it's kind of like the dylanstack.com one, but you just go and see the homepage for Kismet Casa. Really great DAO. Shout out Luciano and Leia. And then Cortex. Oh, sorry. Last one before we get to Cortex. Last one before we get there is I run Caster Scan. Last night I made Caster Scan a V2 frame as well. So you can go in and see a live feed of all the trending, or all not even trending, all the top casts, just like most recent Firehose on the network. go through back and forth. We can click and see the details on a particular cast. We can see what the response looks like from the Nanar API, from Warpcast, from hubs, all that sort of stuff. We can view it on Supercast, view it on Recaster, and I made every individual cast page a frame. So this is some cast. We can click inspect cast. It'll take us right directly to the page for that frame. That one's cool. And then the last one, Cortex. This is what I've been spending some time on. We can see it here as a V2 frame, but I'm just going to load the site so that you can see the entire thing. So with Cortex, I'm building almost like a Perplexity or Grok style AI for Farcaster. I'll show off some of the main functionalities, then I can show you what I've been working on recently. So one, show me upcoming events. We have this little loader here. It's getting top events from events.xyz, and now it's summarizing them. Let's do a new one. This one's cool. Or I think it's in our examples actually. How do I build a bot with Nanar? And it's actually giving us an example snippet of the code needed to go and create a bot, which I think is really cool. I want to explore this docs one more so that, like I was talking about with V2 frames, what if you can just type in, how do I build a V2 frame? That doesn't really work right now, but that is something I would really like to add in. Another one I like, show me recent casts from dwr.eth, showing us this little list of casts here. We can go click it out. I don't know why it's retrieving twice, but then underneath it should be summarizing them. One of the most recent things I added as well is support for multiple models. So right now we've been using Grok from XAI from Elon. We also have support for GPT-4o and 4o Mini. The default is 4o Mini, and I recommend sticking to that. Like it's the cheapest. It has really good prompt caching. There's really smooth streaming. Grok is pretty good too, but it's I don't know, like something like it's like telling you, oh, I'm calling this tool when it should just call the tool. And then also, if you want, we have support for Olama. If you haven't used Olama before, Olama is a tool for running open source models locally on your computer. Per the name, it's best with Llama. If you're going to do this, I highly recommend using a model like Llama 3.3 or something that's like a 70 plus B token or parameter model. Running a smaller, like a 3 or an 8 billion model, I really wouldn't recommend. I tried with an 8 billion and it wasn't great. Not only was it slow, but it just wasn't returning not great. So if you're really going to run it locally, you should do one of the big boy models and you should hopefully have space to actually run it on your computer. If not, don't worry about it. Just stick with 4o Mini. It's really cheap. Try out Grok for fun, but I recommend just like sticking with 4o Mini. And I want to keep building this out. So, if you have any thoughts, let me know. I think this can be really useful. And I want to see as well, like, how does this fit well into a client? So definitely check it out. And if you, for some reason, want to add your own integration or just check out the code, it is also open source. It's a V2 frame where you log in with your wallet. All of the tools, like how it's actually calling those different APIs, happens here in this big tools.ts file. So you can just go check it out. Like I'm quickly, just for the heck of it, you're naming a tool, right? You're giving it a description, what do you want it to do. Optional parameters. These parameters will be made up by the LLM based on what it thinks it needs, and then execute. It can basically just call any API for you. And then what's happening is once that API is called, you can render a different UI with the results from that API. So here, I'm just like checking the name of the tool, and with the result, I'm showing a different component. So like when casts come through, I want to show a little small card for a cast. So we're calling casts here. And if not, then we have this little preview that's showing search for forecaster. So definitely recommend you checking that out. I know this one is a little bit shorter today, but still want to make sure that we're delivering our weekly news. We'll be back next week with a guest, hopefully for the 9th episode of The Hub. I really appreciate you. If you have any questions about building on Farcaster, building V2 frames, etc., feel free to reach me, preferably on Warpcast, but X, Telegram, etc. is dillstack.eth. Really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.